The first sign that something was wrong was how quiet the hallway became when I opened my door. Not silent, just emptied. The kind of quiet that feels deliberate, like a room holding its breath. I stood there with my keys still in my hand, listening to the hum of the building, waiting for the sound to return to normal. It didn't. I live alone on the 4th floor of a mid-sized apartment building built in the early 90s. Beige carpet, fluorescent lighting, walls thin enough to hear your neighbors sneeze. Nothing remarkable. That was why I chose it. Places like this don't hide secrets. They don't have personality. They just exist. At least, that's what I thought. I worked nights, which meant my routine was consistent in a way most people's aren't. I left at 6:40 p.m. and came home just after 3 a.m., 5 nights a week. Same elevator ride. Same flickering light over apartment 4D. Same muffled television through the wall of 4F. Routine is comforting when you're alone. It proves the world is still where you left it. That night, the TV in 4F was off. I noticed because it never was. I locked my door, slid the chain into place, and stood there longer than necessary, listening. The quiet followed me inside, settling into the corners of the apartment. I told myself it was nothing. People change routines. TVs break. Coincidences happen constantly. We just don't usually pay attention to them. I went to bed with the lights on. The next morning I found the first note. It was tucked halfway under my door, plain white paper folded once. No envelope, no name. I assumed it was management. Some reminder about parking or noise complaints. I unfolded it while the coffee brewed. You got home later than usual last night. No signature. No handwriting I recognized. Just clean, careful printing. I stood there for a long time, holding the paper, listening to the coffee maker click and hiss. My first thought was that it was meant for someone else. Wrong apartment. Wrong floor. I checked the number on my door anyway, as if it might have changed overnight. It hadn't. I crumpled the note and threw it away. I didn't tell anyone. There wasn't anyone to tell who wouldn't overreact, and I didn't want that. I wanted a rational explanation. Someone guessing. A joke. A coincidence lined up with a bad mood. That night I paid attention. I noticed how the elevator mirror let me see the hallway behind me even after the doors closed. I noticed the security camera in the lobby blinking red, then going dark. I noticed how long the automatic lights took to come on as I walked toward my apartment. The TV in 4th floor was on again. I slept better because of it. A week passed without anything else happening. I convinced myself I'd imagine the weight of the silence, read too much into a stupid note. Then, one morning, I found another piece of paper under my door. You should replace the battery in your smoke detector. I looked up at the ceiling. The detector blinked red, slow and steady. I hadn't heard it chirp yet, but it would soon. I knew that. My hands were shaking when I checked the peephole. The hallway was empty. I went down to the leasing office later that day and asked, casually, if they'd sent any notices recently. The woman behind the desk smiled and shook her head. Just email this month, she said. Nothing paper. I didn't mention the notes. Saying it out loud would have made it real. That night, I set my phone to record audio while I slept. I don't know what I expected to hear. Footsteps, a door opening, someone breathing. In the morning, I listened to the file with my headphones on, sitting on the edge of the bed. There was nothing unusual, just the low hum of the building, the distant rush of traffic, my own breathing. I laughed at myself and deleted it. The third note arrived 2 days later. You check the peephole before you leave. Every time. I stared at the words until they blurred. I started to think about the small things I did without realizing. The way I paused before unlocking the door. The way I leaned slightly to the left when I tied my shoes. The way I always turned the deadbolt twice before bed. Habits are invisible to you until someone else names them. I installed a small camera inside my apartment that same day, pointed at the front door. It wasn't expensive, just something simple that connected to my phone. It made me feel foolish and relieved at the same time. For a while, nothing happened. I almost relaxed. Almost. Then I noticed something strange in the footage. Every night, at 3:12 a.m., the camera picked up movement. Not in the hallway, but in the reflection on the door's peephole. A shadow passed across it, too close to be a person walking by normally. It lingered for a few seconds, then moved away. I checked the timestamps obsessively. Always the same minute, sometimes the same second. I stopped sleeping. I stopped using the elevator and took the stairs instead. I varied my schedule when I could. I left lights on in different rooms to make it harder to tell where I was. None of it changed anything. The notes kept coming. You don't cook much. You forgot your keys on Tuesday. You talk in your sleep. That one bothered me the most. I started imagining someone standing outside my door at night, ear pressed to the wood, listening. The thought followed me everywhere, even when I wasn't home, even when I was at work, surrounded by people. I called the police. They were polite, patient. They took notes and nodded and asked if I'd had any conflicts with neighbors, if anyone had reason to harass me. They suggested it might be someone in the building playing a prank. They suggested I stop engaging. Engaging? I asked. Reading the notes, one of them said gently. They left after promising to keep an eye on things. The next note was waiting when I got home. They didn't look very hard. I packed a bag that night. I told myself it was temporary, just until things calmed down. I stayed at a hotel across town and slept for almost 12 hours straight. When I came back the next evening, my apartment felt wrong immediately. Not disturbed, nothing was out of place, but different, like someone had stood in the middle of it and learned the shape of the space. The camera was still in position. I checked the footage. At 3:12 a.m., the night I wasn't there, the door opened. Not all the way. Just enough for someone to slip inside. The camera caught a partial reflection in the mirror by the entryway. A shoulder. An arm. Someone wearing clothes very similar to mine. They moved through the apartment confidently, without hesitation. They paused in the kitchen, sat on the edge of the bed, stood in front of the bathroom mirror for a long time. When they left, they locked the door behind them. The final note was on my kitchen counter, folded neatly. You don't notice how much you look like me from behind. I moved out the next day. I didn't tell the landlord why. I didn't take everything. Some things didn't feel like mine anymore. I still check peepholes. I still lock doors twice. I still wake up at 3:12 a.m. most nights without knowing why. Sometimes when I pass my old building, I look up at the 4th floor. The lights are on in my apartment again, and the timing is still perfect.